Imagine building a town in one of the harshest places on Earth, then making it rich, not just functional, not just livable, but elegant. A town with large houses, a ballroom, a hospital, a school, even luxuries that made no sense in the middle of the desert. And then, imagine all of it being left behind, not destroyed in a war, not wiped out by fire, not buried overnight by some sudden catastrophe, but slowly, quietly, taken back by sand, room by room, hallway by hallway, house by house. There is a place in Namibia called Kolmanskop. Once it was one of the richest diamond towns in southern Africa. Today, it looks like the desert is walking through it. Sand pours through doorways. It climbs staircases. It rises into abandoned bedrooms and empty parlors. And the strangest part is that this was once a place of wealth, ambition, and daily life. This is the true story of the town the desert swallowed. Before Kolmanskop became a ghost town, it was born out of obsession. The obsession was diamonds. In the early 20th century, diamonds were discovered in this part of what was then German Southwest Africa. And once that happened, everything changed. What had been harsh, remote desert suddenly became valuable, dangerously valuable. A diamond rush followed, and where there is sudden wealth, towns rise quickly. Kolmanskop was established near Luderitz, not because it was an ideal place to live, but because it was close to the diamond fields that now mattered more than comfort, logic, or long-term stability. That is how many strange places begin. Not from love, not from geography, not from community, but from extraction. Kolmanskop was built because something precious was hidden in the ground, and for a while, that was enough. The town grew fast. And unlike many rough mining camps, Kolmanskop became unusually sophisticated. German-style homes were built in the desert. There was a hospital, a school, a ballroom, a theater, a power station, a butcher, a bakery. For a place surrounded by emptiness, Kolmanskop tried to feel civilized, refined, almost European. That contrast is one of the reasons the place feels so eerie today, because the setting never made sense for the lifestyle they were trying to create. Outside was desert, heat, isolation, sand, wind. Inside was order, architecture, routine, status. It was a bubble of wealth in a landscape that did not care whether humans were there at all. And maybe that is what makes Kolmanskop so powerful now. Even at its peak, the town feels like a challenge thrown out at nature, as if people looked at the desert and said, "We will make this place ours." For a time, it worked. Kolmanskop became prosperous, very prosperous. The diamond industry brought money, and money brought comfort. For the people at the top, this was not a desperate frontier camp. It was a privileged life built in an unlikely place. The town even became known for unusual amenities for the era and region. There are stories of luxuries that feel almost surreal when you remember where this town stood. A place of polished interiors and formal spaces, surrounded by one of the driest landscapes on Earth. That image matters, because when people see Kolmanskop now, they often focus only on the sand-filled rooms. But those rooms were not always empty. They were once tidy, used, lived in. People slept there. Children grew up there. Meals were cooked there. Music was played there. Doctors worked there. Miners returned there at the end of long days. It was not born a ruin. It became one.
And the reason it became one is the same reason it existed in the first place.
diamonds. That was the strength of Kolmanskop, and that was also its weakness. Because towns built on one resource often look powerful right up until the moment they begin to collapse. As long as the diamonds kept the system alive, Kolmanskop had meaning. But places like this do not always die dramatically. Sometimes they die economically first. That is what happened here. Over time, the richest diamond activity shifted elsewhere. More valuable deposits were found farther south, especially near the Orange River. And that changed everything. If a town exists because of one precious thing, and that thing moves, the town's future moves with it. That is the brutal rule of extraction towns. The wealth is real, the buildings are real, the lives are real, but the permanence is often an illusion. Once better opportunities appeared elsewhere, Kolmanskop began to lose the reason it had been created. And once that reason weakens, people begin to leave. Not all at once, not in one cinematic moment, but gradually. Enough people leave that routines begin to break. Enough leave that institutions weaken. Enough leave that a town starts to feel less certain, less permanent, less alive. And then one day, the place is no longer really a town. It is a shell waiting to be claimed by time. Kolmanskop was eventually abandoned in the 1950s. And after that, the desert began doing what it had always been trying to do: come back in.
This is what makes Kolmanskop different from many other ghost towns. A lot of abandoned places decay through rust, weather, mold, or collapse. Kolmanskop does too, of course, but here the desert became an active presence, not background, not scenery, a force. Sand entered the houses and stayed. It gathered in corners. It rose against walls. It moved into rooms like water that had somehow turned solid. That is the image people remember. Not just abandoned buildings, but interiors being reclaimed. A bedroom filling with dunes, a doorway opening into sand, a once elegant house becoming part architecture, part landscape. It almost looks unreal, as if someone created it for a film set, as if nature were making a point. And maybe it was, because Kolmanskop feels like a warning about the temporary nature of human confidence. For a few decades, people carved order into the desert and believed they had built something lasting. But the desert never agreed. That is the haunting power of this place. Kolmanskop does not look like it was destroyed. It looks like it was absorbed. And there is something deeply unsettling about that. Destruction is loud. Absorption is quiet. In a destroyed city, you imagine the moment everything ended. In Kolmanskop, there is no single ending, only a long surrender. The people left. The maintenance stopped. The windows broke. The rooms opened. The sand entered, and it kept entering.
That slow invasion is one of the reasons the town feels so unforgettable, because it turns absence into something visible. You can see abandonment here. You can measure it in dunes inside houses. You can feel it in the way walls still stand while the purpose inside them has vanished. Kolmanskop is also strange because of how much ambition was poured into it. This was not a place built reluctantly. It was built with intention, with money, with confidence. It represented more than mining. It represented the belief that wealth could create permanence, that a successful extraction economy could build a proper town, a stable society, a lasting outpost of comfort in a hostile environment. But extraction towns often live inside a contradiction. They look like communities, but beneath that, many of them remain temporary machines. As long as the resource justifies the machine, everything feels stable. Once it no longer does, the community becomes vulnerable very quickly. Kolmanskop exposes that contradiction perfectly. From the outside, it must once have looked impressive, a thriving settlement in the desert, a symbol of order and prosperity. From the future, it looks fragile because we know what came next. The silence, the sand, the emptiness. And once you know that ending, even the wealth begins to look haunted. There is another reason this town leaves such a strong impression. It is beautiful. Not in a cheerful way, not in a romantic postcard way, but in a strange, unsettling way. The soft curves of sand against sharp door frames, the faded walls, the filtered desert light entering abandoned interiors, the feeling that the town is being erased, but slowly enough for us to watch it happen.
That beauty can be misleading. It is easy to turn places like this into aesthetic objects, to admire the photographs and forget the harder truth underneath. Kolmanskop was not just picturesque ruin. It was tied to colonial power, mineral extraction, labor, and the unequal systems that allowed wealth to flourish in one tiny pocket of the desert, while everything around it remained harsh and precarious. That deeper history matters, because ghost towns are not only about emptiness, they are about what created the life there in the first place. And in Kolmanskop, the answer is greed, geology, empire, and opportunity colliding in the desert. That collision created a town, and the end of that collision left behind a monument to impermanence. Today, Kolmanskop is one of the most photographed ghost towns in the world. People come because the images are unforgettable. A dining room filled with sand, a hallway fading into dunes, a grand old structure slowly surrendering to the Namib. But the best way to understand Kolmanskop is not just as a photography location. It is a story about what happens when human ambition is built on something temporary. The diamonds felt permanent enough to justify everything. The houses, the infrastructure, the routines, the dream of permanence itself, but they were not. And once the town lost its economic purpose, the desert revealed how fragile all of it had really been. That is what makes Kolmanskop one of the strangest places on Earth. Not just because it is abandoned, not just because it is beautiful, not just because sand has entered the homes, but because it shows how quickly confidence can become ruin. A rich town became a ghost town. A house became a dune. A symbol of success became a warning. In the end, Kolmanskop is not simply a town in the desert. It is a town being erased by the very landscape people once believed they had conquered. And that's why it stays in your mind. Because it does not look like the desert arrived. It looks like the desert was patient. And in the end, it won. If you enjoy strange places, abandoned towns, forgotten history, and real stories that feel stranger than fiction, subscribe to Strange Places Explained for more.